Morning, Tony Virtue speaking, Virtue and Partners with our regular monthly update, and obviously not just beginning of a month, beginning of a decade, so where did all those years go? Before I start, there's a note there obviously about the fires. Hardly anybody has not been affected by this, so we have clients down in the regions. I'll be travelling down there as soon as it's sensible to do so, and in my papers here there are notes about how you can assist, etc. So your thoughts are with us, and those of you who'll be watching this video from there, and we'll be doing all we can to be of help. Well, turning to the year or the decade behind us, a decade that for me, probably the most relevant thing from a business point of view was the way that technology really eliminated inflation. As you eliminate inflation, you eliminate interest rates effectively. And the net effect of that was we had interest rates really at all-time lows for pretty much the whole decade, but particularly in the last couple of years. That was very good for share markets, good for property markets, not so good for cash and bonds. Clearly not without risk, but the message here is that technology is here to stay, and we're all benefiting from that. The net effect of that is that things are getting cheaper. As they become cheaper, that effectively is deflationary, and by doing so, if there's no inflation, then there's really very little likelihood of interest rates going up. Now that's very important when you're planning, because it does mean at the moment you can buy shares with borrowed money, you can buy property with borrowed money and be positively geared. Now, not a risk-free call option. There are times when markets correct, but over the longer term, as you can see in my graph, those people who invested 10 years ago would be feeling fairly comfortable with themselves now. And as I often say, income gives you lifestyle, taxable when you earn it, but assets give you wealth. If you can get the right assets and hang on to them long enough, then the income from that gives you choices. One of the immediate catalysts for the jump in the market, and by the way, this is the best start in the market for a calendar year since 1983, has been the eventual signing, or at least the first stage of the US-China trade agreement. It's been kicking on for 4 years before Trump even got elected, and it's been a bit of a stage wrestling going on. Well, they have signed an agreement just in the last week or so. We do, of course, have an election for a new president in October, November of this year. Now, generally how this goes is that a good economy is good for the incumbent. So you'd expect them to do fairly safe things with interest rates, so minimal moves there, and they'll try and kick the market along. There's nothing like the wealth effect that comes from shares going up, property going up for being re-elected there. At the same time, Brexit seems to have sorted itself out. I think Britain will leave in the next week or two, and at least we've got that behind us. So at the moment, reasonable prospects for the year. General consensus being that it won't be as good as last year, which was obviously an outlier, but at the moment income streams remain consistent and every prospect of capital growth as the year goes on. One of the areas that we often talk about in Sydney is, of course, property. It's back in vogue. We've had a few very good months. In my notes, I talk about the move towards living close to the city, into easier living, into how that integrates with aged care and health assistance there. That's only going to grow, and particularly with interest rates being very low. It is an area I've always had a very, very active interest in, and happy to discuss that further with you. So, well, welcome to the decade, and we look forward, this is our 30th year this year, we look forward to continuing for many, many years to come. Tony Virtue, when experience pays.